We've got ourselves a Game 7 tomorrow night in Brooklyn, and we're going to be giving away tickets to the Nets and Bucks Game 7 a little bit later on in the program. We got Yankee tickets to give away each and every hour as well. But last night, I mean, we had Brian Scalabrine on it yesterday. He nailed it in terms of saying that it would take a Superman type of performance if you thought that if you really believed that the Nets were going to win a Game 6 in Milwaukee. We know how good the Bucks are at home. I talked about yesterday the Nets getting off to a good start. They didn't. At one point in time, they trailed in the first quarter 18-5. They trailed by 7 after the opening quarter. They got it within 5. But each and every time they got it within 5, Maggie, there was this unbelievable Bucks run. I mean, how many times did you see Middleton either getting fouled on a 3? He had 2 4-point plays. They got within 5 early fourth quarter, and then the Bucks responded with a quick 14-0 run to pretty much put the game out of reach. So Middleton was fantastic. He drops in 38. He played 42 minutes. Giannis gave you 30 and 41 minutes of work. Drew Holiday, who's been an absolute zero offensively in this series, he finally, even though he really struggled shooting the ball from the outside, just 1 of 10. Holiday did have 21 points. Their big three, Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday, all performed in a big Game 6 as they win that game by 15 going away. Durant did his thing. You looked at it, James Harden, even though Steve Nash after the game said he's severely limited, he's not the same player, obviously dealing with that hamstring injury, continuing to deal with that hamstring injury, but he dropped in 16. He was better offensively. They did not get the superlative performance from Jeff Green coming off the bench or playing in this game. He only had 5 points. He had 27 in Game 5. Griffin was okay. Milwaukee by far was the better basketball team last night, and we get a Game 7, which is fantastic when you watch these series. And regardless, hockey, basketball, doesn't matter. You get a Game 7 baseball, obviously, it's the best thing in professional sports. So we're going to all witness that tomorrow night out in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I was disappointed. Maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised. But I was disappointed with the Nets. You mentioned it. They got it down to 5 a couple different times. I mean, 3 different times they were able to cut it to 5. And it just felt like after they would be able to whittle it down, the Bucks lead, Chris Middleton was just right there to make a big play. You mentioned the Joe Harris, fouling him behind the 3-point line. He hits all 3 of those, and then it just looked like it sent the Bucks on this massive run, 14-0 run that gets sparked there. And before you know it, Kevin Durant, James Harden, all the starters are sitting on the bench, and you got the mop-up crew, and you're bagging and tagging them. And it's a shame, but for the people out there who believe that the Nets have like this built-in excuse if they blow this series, I don't see it. I don't see that at all. I think there is so much pressure on the Nets on Saturday night, Moose, and here's why. You can say that, well, they don't have everyone healthy. James Harden's not healthy. Kyrie Irving's not there. We don't know if he'll be there for a Game 7. What in the history of this particular big three makes you think that they'll ever all be healthy together? You talk about running it back even next year. This is a short championship window for them because player options kick in after next season. Who knows, with the NBA, guys move around all the time. You really have this opportunity right in front of you, even if you are dealing with injuries. I'm not buying the built-in excuse there. You got a Bucks team that, they looked really good last night. They led wire to wire. Nets never had the energy, and maybe that was coming off of the huge Game 5, so they had a little residual. Maybe Reggie was right, and said he should have sat Durant and Harden. I don't know. But a Game 7 with this opportunity, and then looking ahead, look at what's going on in the rest of the NBA. You have everyone basically dealing with injuries in this postseason. You've got no AD, no LeBron. You have a path here and a chance. If somehow the Nets drop this 7th game and get eliminated from the playoffs by the Milwaukee Bucks, that would be one of the all-time missed opportunities for this team, for guys like Kevin Durant. And again, I can't do the injuries as the excuse here. It seems easy, but you can't allow that because they just got outplayed. They got outplayed. I mean, you have the Milwaukee Bucks whose big three is all fully healthy. And for the most part, the Nets have been right there with them. I just look at this opportunity for the Nets, and it would just be so massively disappointing if they let it slip through their fingers.
Yeah, I don't look at it that way. I don't. I know the opportunity. Obviously, Harden wanted to play because he's trying to win an NBA championship, and we gave James Harden all the credit for coming back when he clearly is not 100% healthy, and he's limited about what he can do. I've said, I mean, Milwaukee's won 3 of the last 4 games. I mean, the only game that Milwaukee lost in the last 4, it took a historical performance by Kevin Durant to win it, scoring 49 points in 48 minutes and having a triple-double. I think and Milwaukee utterly collapsed in the second half in Game 5 as well. I mean, I would make the argument that, the Nets are probably lucky that there's a Game 7 tonight with all the injuries. I think the injuries play. I mean, do you think it's hard to look at it and say, well, all the pressure, or I can't look at it as an excuse. Milwaukee's a better basketball team with a limited James Harden, with just Kevin Durant and no Kyrie Irving. Those are huge losses.
They're huge losses, but Moose, by margins.
James Harden's nowhere near the same player. You don't have Kyrie Irving. Now, if all 3 are healthy, I think the series is probably over. And the Nets are a better basketball team. But you take those guys, I'm taking about a 65, maybe 70% James Harden. I got Kevin Durant. And then I throw in Joe Harris, who's been an absolute, for the most part, a 0 in this series. Jeff Green playing with
bench was nowhere in Game 6.
He had 27 points in Game 5. I can't look at it and say I'm going to judge this Brooklyn Net team. I think they could lose tomorrow night. The home team have won each and every game up until this point. I think historically speaking in the NBA, I think it's about 80% of Game 7s are won by the home team. So you look at it, the Nets are coming back home. We'll see how they respond. But if Milwaukee plays their game, they've just got more offensive solutions right now than the Brooklyn Nets do.
But they have not played well in Brooklyn. You have a team that just 4 days ago, you had Charles Barkley on national TV or 3 days ago, calling them a stupid basketball team.
They beat themselves.
Right, but you have the emotional, I think you have the smarter players, quite frankly, the high IQ players, even if Harden is limited. And you have gotten absolutely nothing from your bench on these road games, and that's where this thing needs to change. And when I talk about this, it's all right, you have this Game 7 opportunity right in front of you, and I think why the Nets would really be kicking themselves if they they probably feel the weight of the world here, but would be kicking themselves is because look at how, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy path here, but look at how the rest of the playoffs could be shaking out for them. Think about what's going to go on this offseason, Moose. The league is always constantly shaking. What if you have a Dame Lillard joins the Lakers? Hell, you already had the Boston Celtics make a move this morning. You're going to have do you think Miami's not going to be making moves this offseason? Do you think that Boston's not going to get better with a new coach? Do you think X, Y, Z? This is the opportunity. I understand that they have injuries. You still have Kevin Durant. Harden actually was better. The problem was he just couldn't push the tempo, unfortunately, with his hamstring, and you got nothing from your bench. They just have to get through this Game 7, rest up, hopefully get a little bit more healthy, get a Kyrie back, and I think they're on their way. If they drop this one at home, I think they'll always look back and say, maybe they would say, well, we were injured, so there was nothing we could do. I don't think they want to take that excuse, though. I don't think that they want to take that way out. Not when you have Kevin Durant.
It's not a matter of them taking the excuse. It's whether or not you mentioned that you think all the pressure in the world is on the Brooklyn Nets.
I do.
The injuries are a factor. You don't have Kyrie Irving on the court. You have a 60% James Harden. You got Kevin Durant. You look at the starting fives that they're rolling out there. Who's got a better starting five?
Well, if the Nets role players would actually step up a little bit more on the road.
I'm talking about the starting five. If you look at the starting fives
their big three is healthy, and they scored 89 points combined in Game 6. I understand your point.
Barkley talked about how stupid they were because Milwaukee cost themselves the game in Game 5.
Right.
That's
They've cost themselves several games.
Well, I understand
not
that.
Just Game 5.
I get it. Well, not Game 1 and Game 2, but they've won 3 of the last 4 games in it. I'm not putting the pressure and the weight of the world on the Brooklyn Nets. I really am not, because I think I look at them and I'm judging them properly and saying, I know they're limited. They could still win the game. They could still beat Milwaukee. You could get a great performance. Maybe Joe Harris shows up in a Game 7. Maybe it's another role player. Maybe it's Jeff Green. Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe it's a combination of Harris, Green, and Blake Griffin. But I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to judge this Brooklyn Net team the same as I did to start the playoffs when they were whole and healthy. Now, if you were looking at a healthy team and it was Kyrie and it was Harden and it was Kevin Durant and it was a Game 7 in Brooklyn, I would agree. I would say all the pressure in the world is on the Brooklyn Nets. They cannot lose that game. But we've seen injuries play a massive factor in these NBA playoffs, and they have impacted the Brooklyn Nets. It is not the same team with a limited Harden, no Kyrie, and Kevin Durant trying to play Superman. It's just not the same
I know,
team.
Moose, but
you're also seeing the limitations of the bench and role players as well, as far as what they can do in generating their own offense, and you've seen guys shrivel up under the pressure.
I know, but think about it, right? Like, what are we saying? We're saying that this is Milwaukee Bucks basically at full strength. I'm taking Dante DiVincenzo out of this. This is the Milwaukee Bucks at full strength. This is the best that they can throw at any opponent. Especially Game 6. That's as good as they've really looked. I mean, that was really good. Giannis getting downhill, the transition, Middleton, everything, right? That's as good as they looked. And still with 8 minutes left to go in that game, it was a 5-point game. And if they had just like the Nets were awful offensively. They were grinding that out. Sure, Durant had 30 points on 30 shots. I mean, this was not easy for them at all. And the final score doesn't look great, but like there were moments when the Nets actually could have taken advantage, and they were playing badly. Like the Milwaukee Bucks are giving you their best effort, and the Nets, who are severely limited, are like right there with them. Right there with like this limited cast. That's why I'm like, that's why I feel like they have to be feeling like they're right there. And if they lose this Game 7 with the opportunity to get healthier before the Eastern Conference Finals and see what you're doing against either the Atlanta Hawks or a Joel Embiid with a knee injury and a Ben Simmons who's afraid to shoot the basketball and a Tobias Harris who's running away from the basketball in the last minutes of that game, like this is your chance. You just have to get by this team that's throwing everything at you, and you're still basically able to hang with them. Basically.
Well, can't all of that be true? We understand the opportunity, but you also have to realistically look at what the Nets have and what they don't have.
I know, but if
they were within five. They were within 5 in the fourth quarter. Milwaukee hit them with a 14-0 run.
Right.
And the game was over.
Yes.
I mean, the game was over.
They also packed it in.
Every time the Nets got within 5 points, Milwaukee hit them a run. You want to go? You're going to look at the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter, right? 72-67 game. With about 70 seconds to go in the third quarter, right? 72-67. It was Chris Middleton jumper, Chris Middleton jumper, Chris Middleton layup. They won on a 10-0 run in a combination of the end of the third, beginning of the fourth, to go from 72-67 up to 82-67 up. That was the answer every single time. Now you want to say, guys, listen, that's not going to happen in a Game 7? You might be right. You want to tell the old Hubie Brown cliche that bench players, role players play significantly better at home in the playoffs as compared to on the road. You'll get a 20 or 25% markup. Fair. I would agree with that. I'm not telling you that Nets can't win tomorrow night. Of course I think they can win. I mean, they've got the best player in the court in Kevin Durant, and I've talked about the non-basketball IQ that we've talked about with the Milwaukee Bucks and no confidence in Mike Budenholzer. So I'm not telling you that the game is over. I think the Nets have every opportunity to win on Saturday night, but I'm not going to tell you that all the pressure is in the world. I get the opportunity that is for them. And they're going to look at it as a golden opportunity as well, looking at the NBA landscape and the playoff landscape. But should they lose, well, we understand why they lost, because they're just, if you look at the starting fives, the Milwaukee Bucks have a better starting five right now as compared to the Brooklyn Nets. Now, there's other factors that come into play. I get it. But without Irving and with a limited Harden, Milwaukee, I just think, is a more talented basketball team. They don't have bigger stars, but they're just a more talented basketball team right now. We'll see. Maybe Kyrie Irving, amazingly enough, is available for a Game 7. Maybe James Harden is a little bit better in Game 7 than he was in Game 6, because he was better in Game 6 than he was in Game 5. So maybe James Harden is a little bit better offensively. Maybe you get another Herculean performance from Kevin Durant. Who knows? The Nets can win. I'm not telling you I don't have the confidence in the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't have confidence in them. But I think Milwaukee's I'm not going to put the pressure and the weight of the world on the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I think they're feeling it. I think they're feeling it. I think especially Durant, because they have to be wondering, all right, we basically have a 2-year window. How do we know we're ever going to be healthy as a big three, considering the injury history of these three players? And now you look at what could be lying ahead if you just can get past Milwaukee, and this could be your best chance to win a title, because who knows what the NBA could look like next year? Who knows how much the landscape? You got what? How many different coaching openings do you have? How many different superstars are feeling sad and feeling like they want to get moved? How many different rumblings do you have? Like this this, despite the fact that they are dealing with massive injuries, I'm not denying that, this is still the best opportunity lying in front of the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, because it's the most recent. Who knows how next year does play out? I will tell you, when healthy, I put this three up against any three.
But you never know if they'll be healthy, Moose. We have no evidence of what they look like healthy. 8 games, nothing.
They're not healthy now, and they're playing a Game 7 at home. I think you realistically got to look at that and say, all right, let's put in the right perspective about what this team potentially can do. And who knows when you see Kyrie Irving. I mean, listen, honestly. I mean, and who knows, the odds are that James Harden's hamstring's not going to get better by playing. He needed more rest. So even if you get past Milwaukee on Saturday night, what does this team look like in the Eastern Conference Finals? We want to hear from you. 877-337-6666.